Weatherman's weather outlook for the next week or so for skiers and riders from coast to coast. I'm meteorologist Herb Stevens. In the next 10 minutes or so, I'll take a look at the weather factors that will be influencing snow conditions across the United States going into the first week of the new year. But most importantly, I have to say, as I get my pen ready to go here, I have to say thank you to the nice folks at Uvex for sponsoring this report. I've been using Uvex goggles and helmets for about 20 years now. They keep my head warm, keep my eyes working well in bad weather, and I highly recommend that if you're in the market for goggles or a helmet, check out Uvex. The headlines of this report: the colder pattern coast to coast is now pretty much in place. A week ago at this time, there weren't a whole lot of smiles in snow country, especially over the eastern half of the country. That has changed, and I think we're in a pattern that overall is going to be colder than normal going forward through January. That doesn't mean we won't hit some bumps in the road from time to time. We got a couple of them to talk about today, but I do like what I see overall going forward through this month. The snowmakers have made some big gains in the Midwest and into the East this week, and those gains will continue through the end of the week. The Southern Rockies are going to get some natural snow early on in this period. We are going to have to deal with what I call a cutter, a storm that does not take an ideal track for snow in the eastern United States, as low pressure is going to move up through the eastern Great Lakes into the St. Lawrence River Valley this weekend, but it doesn't necessarily mean rain for everyone as we saw on Christmas Eve, and I'll explain why coming up shortly. The pattern overall in the northern hemisphere is progressive right now, but it is going to be biased colder than normal for much of the United States over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks. But the word progressive infers that there will be changes, and there certainly will, and as I say, there'll be a couple of bumps in the road from time to time. Today's Jetstream map has two primary features for skiers and riders. We've got this strong northwesterly flow across the lakes and into the eastern United States, and that's providing snowmakers with plenty of cold, dry air to work with all the way down the Appalachians into the mountains of North Carolina. There's some good lake effect going on in the lee of Lake Ontario and the Tug Hill Plateau, and Snow Ridge in upstate New York is one of the primary recipients of that snow in this particular episode. And we have an upper level low down here. It's approaching the Four Corners region, but this is going to produce some natural snow in the mountains of Southern California, northern Arizona, New Mexico, and then southern portions of Colorado and Utah. So let's take a look at the radar, and there's not a lot going on. If you look carefully, you can see the lake effect snow band off of Ontario. There's another one south of Buffalo, and that could be good news for Holiday Valley down Route 219 from Buffalo. But the biggest area of snow is out here in the southwest. The radar coverage is not especially good. There's actually more snow happening than is depicted here. The surface map on New Year's Eve shows why things are relatively quiet, because we have high pressure over Spokane, another one over central Wyoming, another area of high pressure down near Oklahoma City, and here's one over the Boot Heel of Missouri, another one in the vicinity of the North Carolina, South Carolina border. That's where south of the border is, I think, on Interstate 95. But high pressure is calling the shots, and it's not an especially stormy map that we're looking at today. So let's take a look at the western outlook, and if we take a look first of all at where watches and warnings have been issued, I put this up here just kind of in jest, because there's going to be snow and some ice in the state of Texas, and every snowflake to me that falls in the state of Texas, because there's not a ski area there, that's a wasted snowflake. So that's why I kiddingly say ski Texas. But of more importance to skiers and riders are the winter storm warnings that are concentrated here in the basic vicinity of the Four Corners region right there. And this is produced by an upper-level disturbance that's swinging through the southwest right now. It brought some snow to the Sierra over the course of the last couple of days and freshened things up there. But remember what I said last week and the week before about these cold air cumulus clouds indicating where the cold air is over the waters of the Pacific. Look how far south they have gotten with this particular system. The upper level low is somewhere here over northern Arizona, and the cold air is pushed all the way down to the same latitude as Baja. This is very dry air and cold air over the water and certainly over the Sierra, and it is going to be chilly on the slopes for the next couple of days in the far west. Those temperatures will be moderating as we get into the weekend. And I shouldn't forget the folks in the Northwest. It is cold there, too, and they may see a little bit of light snow in the Cascades Friday and again Sunday and Monday, as we have an upper-level ridge in this part of the country, and there may be just enough room for some energy to come over the ridge and bring some snow into the Cascades and then down into the Wasatch and into the Tetons in northern Colorado late in the upcoming weekend. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. Here's the New Year's Day morning surface map with low pressure near the Four Corners region, snow falling over southern Utah, southern Colorado, northern Arizona, northern New Mexico. So places like Taos and Wolf Creek and Purgatory, and to a lesser extent Telluride, they're a little too far north for the heavy hitter snowfall from this particular system, but also the Arizona Snow Bowl up north of Flagstaff should do very well with this particular storm. Meanwhile, to the north, high pressure rules over the northern Rockies and over the Cascades, so that on New Year's Day it's going to be a quiet day. But again, they had some snow in the northwest the last couple of days, and that certainly helped out. By the time we get to the evening of New Year's Day, the storm will be moving out here onto the plains of New Mexico. Just a few lingering snow showers will be found in these mountains, but Friday looks like a nice powder day coming up. Tomorrow, Thursday, New Year's Day, you'll be skiing in the snow in this area. Otherwise, not much of a change, of reinforcing cold fronts coming down into the northern plains and into the northern Rockies in this general direction, and that could help set off a little bit of light snow up here as the somewhat colder air presses in as we head toward the weekend. Now, high pressure is going to dominate in the west through the weekend. As I mentioned, you might find some snow up here in the northwest over the weekend, but it's going to be light. But I want to skip ahead to Monday. Now, Monday, we will still be under the domination of this ridge over the western United States, but things are going to change. And this ridge will dominate next week as well, probably through midweek, and temperatures will gradually moderate during that time anywhere west of the Continental Divide. Again, you could see some energy slide down the front side of that ridge and bring some snow late in the weekend, early next week, from Washington across Idaho down into the Wasatch and into the mountains of northern Colorado. The mountains of southern Colorado are getting it early on, and the northern mountains up north of Interstate 70 up to Steamboat, your chance at some meaningful snow, light to moderate amounts, mind you, will come late in the weekend, early next week. But let's skip ahead to late next week, because that's when changes will start to take place in the west, as a pretty pronounced and energetic storm will be approaching the west coast at that time, and the ridge will be flattened out and shoved to the east, and it'll be the end of next week before the coastal ranges and the Sierra and moving inland will have a chance at a more significant snowfall. I wouldn't etch this particular storm in stone, but the general idea is the progressive pattern is going to lead to low pressure moving into the west coast, and whether or not it splits and a piece goes that way and a piece comes down to the south, we'll have to sort that out next week. But the point is, it will take until late next week until the pattern changes so that this is even possible. And 10 days from now, the suggestion is that the storm will have weakened coming in, but notice there's no ridge along the west coast, and this will give you the opportunity, at least for several days, for additional energy to move into the west and bring additional snow. 7-day snowfall looks like this. The bulk of the new snow will fall with the storm in the next couple of days down in the southern Rockies. There'll be some additional snow in the northern Rockies from those systems sliding down the east side of the ridge. But when we go to the 10-day snowfall, keep your eyes right here on the Sierra. That's who's going to benefit late next week, I believe, as storm systems move in from the Pacific. So that's the way it looks in the west. Let's shift our attention now to the Midwest and to the east. Again, we'll go to the map with the watches and the warnings. And the only thing we have here are lake effect snow advisories and warnings east of Lake Ontario and east of Lake Erie. A little bit of snow is falling here in the northern lower peninsula of Michigan off of Lake Superior as well. But the thing I want to point out to the skiers in the Midwest and the east is what's going to happen at 5,000 feet with respect to the temperatures over the next 4 or 5 days. This is the 32-degree line, and basically north of that line, you can make productive snow, and especially up here where you see these purples. It has to be cold aloft to support cold surface temperatures, and when I see these temperatures in the range of 15 to 20 below, and this is centigrade at 5,000 feet, that equates to good snowmaking conditions at the surface. So with that in mind, this is New Year's Eve, and we're going to go ahead through this sequence and go first of all to Friday, the 2nd of the month, And you notice that the 32-degree line has shifted north. Why is that happening? Let's go to the third. There's low pressure coming up out of what's left of the southwestern storm, headed in this general direction. Not a great track for snow in the northeast because of the counterclockwise circulation around that low as it takes that track through the eastern lakes and up into Ontario, or perhaps down the St. Lawrence River Valley. We go to the 4th. Now, this is Sunday. If I have my dates right, let me double check that. Yeah, that's Sunday. This is actually Saturday night, and there will be enough mild air coming northward that the precipitation is going to start in the form of snow and then change to sleet and some freezing rain and eventually some rain in the lower elevations. But the good news is that the cold air is going to sweep right in behind it, so that by Sunday night and Monday, the snowmakers will be back to work. There's no question about that. What I need you to know is that most of the northeast, away from the coast, is going to net snow out of this. They will start with a thump of snow, several inches anyway, and up here north of the Thruway and Interstate 90, the Massachusetts Turnpike, it will be plowable snow before any mix starts to develop. So the Northeast is going to net snow out of this, and there will be snow in the upper Midwest as well on the colder side of the track of this storm. So the resorts of northern lower Michigan and Wisconsin and the upper peninsula of Michigan will benefit as well. They won't get anywhere near the mild air. It's a quick one-day and maybe even a 12 to 18-hour spike of milder air coming up as the storm takes that unfavorable track. Now, earlier this week, I thought that a secondary storm could form here off the mid-Atlantic coast, and that would limit the amount of mild air that can make it into the Northeast. I don't think that low is going to be very strong, so its effect will be minimized. So we start next week with a resurgence in the cold air in the Northeast, and that cold air is going to make it all the way down into the central and southern Appalachians as well. And then this little thing is L over New York State. This is Tuesday night. And I think we're going to see an Arctic wave come along the boundary of the coldest air, and it will originate somewhere out here near Alberta province, and that's why we call them Alberta Clippers. And that'll bring some light snow to the Adirondacks and the mountains of northern New England, perhaps down into the Catskills and the Berkshires, depending on the ultimate track of this thing. It won't have a lot of moisture. Alberta Clippers seldom do, but it will be capable of producing higher ratio snow because of the Arctic air that's going to be in place, maybe at 15, 20 to 1, so you might get a powder day with some fluffy snow here in the Northeast coming up Tuesday night and Wednesday especially of next week, something we'll keep an eye on. 7-day precipitation shows that the track of the storm will be like that. It'll be enhanced on the eastern side of the track because it'll have a little bit of Gulf moisture coming into the circulation. But the important question is, what about snowfall? And you can see from this forecast that snowfall is predicted in the mountains of West Virginia and southwest PA, some lake enhancement here around Peak and Holiday Valley. A pretty good snowfall north of Interstate 90. Now here again, there will be some mixture in the mountains to the north, but the further north you go, the less impact the milder air intrusion is going to have. But these areas are going to make out okay with this storm in spite of the fact that there won't be a favorable track. Now keep your eyes right down here because I'm going to go to 10 days in snowfall, and notice the snow fills in Virginia, and that could be good news for Wintergreen, the Homestead, and for Massanutten. And there's also going to be some extra snow falling out here in some of these smaller ski areas from South Dakota into Iowa, and that'll be the middle of next week. And the snow will be enhanced as well in the upper peninsula and portions of the lower peninsula of Michigan, because when that Arctic air gets renewed early next week, the lake effect is going to kick in once again. 15 days down the road, this is basically what the jet stream should look like. The polar vortex, or a piece of it, will be well to the north. There'll still be a connection for cold air into the eastern half of the United States. We'll have to watch and see how much this ridge fights back, and that's going to make it a little difficult, I think, for snowmaking at times in the southern Appalachians. But overall, I expect this progressive pattern to continue, which means that the ridge should build back up about 2 weeks from now in the west, and that would favor a trough and colder than normal temperatures in much of the east. So in summary, the active pattern is going to continue in the east, but it will be biased colder than normal in the next couple of weeks. The ridge will rule for a week or so in the west, and then they'll get some storminess late next week. The upper Midwest is just going to stay cold until further notice, and this progressive pattern is generally favorable for all the ski and snowboard regions of the country. Enjoy your sliding. I'm Herb Stevens, the skiing weatherman. We'll see you again in a week, and in the meantime, remember, UVEX rules.